Hello and welcome to another Form-A-Day challenge by clevr. My name is Kareem Cooperhouse and we're looking today on day 18 at the Psych Work Order forms. Now, many psychologists as well as psych departments within school districts don't believe that you can successfully automate a psych work order form. And I'm here to show you today that it can be done by leveraging the clevr platform. So let's take a look at what we did for one school district. So right away, when we log in, there's a dashboard that is indicating how many students are on a psych work order. And a few data sets are available as well. But let's dive into the form and show you what was done in order to help this district manage their psych work orders. So as a psychologist or a user or supervisor, I have access to certain students. I can add new students and then return to existing students. So let's take a look at Josh over here. And the first thing that you'll notice is that the work order is split into 5 tabs. And that's how we manage the real estate of a form, because there's a lot of data being collected in here. And the district decided to break it up into 5 chunks. In the general information, this is really general information about the students. And you'll notice that a lot of this information is grayed out. It's grayed out because we're pulling that information in from the student information system. Now, this is a large district, and most of our clients are perfectly comfortable with having data uploaded on a nightly basis, meaning every night we go and verify this information to make sure it's up to date. But this particular district was afraid that some data might not be up to date that required it to be up to date at the time of completing some of these forms. And so they put in place something called import data, where the person who's completing this form can come over here, click on import data, and in real time, we'll go and verify that this information is indeed accurate and that it hasn't changed since the overnight process. Now, I won't do that right now because this is a sandbox and it's not currently connected. And so one of the things that we can do here is notice the pop-up box that appears over here. It says this field is able to receive data from another template, meaning another form in clevr. And you'll see here that we've got Margaret Ann as the psychologist, but there's a whole bunch of psychologists. And so if I change to Allison, you'll notice that over here, we're now dealing with Allison. And then over here, if there's somebody else, then we could put somebody else, or if it's Allison again, then we can indicate Allison. So this is something that happens throughout these tabs. And again, if I change this back to someone else, we go to Amanda, now we're at Amanda. And so all of this is pre-populated, except for the last section over here, where I'm able to put in some comments. The next tab is the work order tab. And this is where I'll be able to indicate a lot of different data fields, effective status, and notice these are all required fields. And then if the district decides to contract this out, they'll be able to indicate that over here. And they have a section over here which is very innovative. This is a district that takes in a lot of interns, psych interns, and they wanted to be able to track their interns as well as give them access to this form. And so that's what this section is over here. They can indicate who the student or the intern is, and then put in their email. And by putting in their email and sending a notification, this starts a process whereby this intern will now have access to this form in order to go do what she or he needs to do. Then you'll notice here that in this tab, we have subtabs. And this is to better manage the real estate of a form. And so here's the reason for the referral. And I can come in here and choose the reason for the referral and then indicate what assessment has been done, what intervention has been done, what type of consultation has been done. I can then move over to clinical impressions and indicate what kind of clinical impressions or diagnoses have been done. And you'll notice here we have something called show hide. So as I do this, submenus appear that are related to this header. Service hours. This form is tracking service hours. So I can come over here and indicate the service hours based on the parameters indicated in this pop-up. Over here, we have something called group service, and you'll notice that it's actually pulling in data from another template because the group service is for a group of students, and that has its own form where they're tracking all these different students that are part of that group service, and based on that form, these fields here get populated accordingly. Then over here is the instruments use. So perhaps I used this one. Maybe I did the Connors. And maybe I used a third one that happens to not be in this list. I can indicate that over here and then type it out. Then the assessment techniques. What techniques were used? I noticed that we are using, or the district is using, show hide again in order to manage the real estate and the data that's being collected. So lots of data here being collected, and you can really get granular on how this data is actually being collected. And here, look, you'll see that we're even tracking versions, and this goes on. And as I come back up, I could then move over to the next tab, which is where we upload any files or links that are related to this particular form. Then the fourth tab over here is about the reports. And so who created these reports? So perhaps I can come in here, and you have to remember that different psychologists and different users will have access to this form based on their roles and privileges. So you could have different people completing different tabs or different fields, and then making some fields read only to other users. And so here's the assessment section where I'll be able to, again, complete more data, and as well as anecdotal comments. I can add as many as I want. So if I click add here, a new box, and I can add some more information. And then once again, there is a sign off. And if there's an intern working with this student, that will get indicated over here. And if I come back up, we do the same thing all over again for the counseling, the consultation, and then the group intervention. There's also an additional section to track files and notes. And then the revised assessment versus the revised counseling versus the revised group intervention. Now, all of these assessments are great, but oftentimes you require a printout. So you can come over here and then choose the necessary printout for these different assessments that are being done. And these assessments are created as a PDF file, and those can be shared based on the required parameters of the roles and privileges of users. Now, just so you know, the data being presented in this sandbox is dummy data. It's not real student data. The last tab is the work order history. This is where we can track all of the history of work orders that were done for this student. And whenever you have access to the work order history, you can actually dive back into the form. And you'll notice, though, that most of the time, these forms are locked and you can't change the information anymore. We're also tracking the completion rate. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about for this form is the data being collected, right? The whole purpose of a form is to collect data. And the reason you're collecting data is because you need it to drive evidence-based decision-making. So here I have a list of students that are on this psych work order, but it doesn't provide me with a lot of information. So I can then move over to the advanced search. And the advanced search provides me with a lot more information. So if I come over to the psych work order, you'll notice that every single field in that psych work order is now available for reporting purposes. So if I want to know all the different students that are assigned to a certain psychologist, right, to that Allison or to Amanda, I'd be able to do that. If I want to know how many students are being seen using grant money from grant program number 1, I'd be able to do that. If I want to see how many students are exceptional gifted and talented or moderate or whatever criteria is here, I'll be able to do that. If I want to see in terms of status, how many students are in an open file or closed or canceled or in group counseling, I'll be able to do that, and so on and so forth. And that's the real power of a clevr form. It's not the ability, or not simply the ability, to collect data, but also the ability to pull that data out, extract it, and drive evidence-based reporting and decision making. I hope you've enjoyed this quick view of a psych work order form. We'd love to see your psych work order and work with you to automate it. Stay tuned tomorrow as I share another form for our Form a Day challenge.